Hey, and welcome back to another Adventure World in Godot. So in this one, we're going to add a projectile to the weapon, our boomstick, and make it affect a bad guy. So let's get started. Alright, first we need a bad guy to shoot. So, we made a snail a while back. So first, let me pick my castle, my tower, and then I'm going to drag a snail in right there. Now he's really tiny and we're just going to shoot right over him. So let's scale him up and make him bigger. Humongous snail. Awesome. And he may or may not behave very well, so let's check that out. Oh, he works just fine. He's just going to chill out there. So, actually, you know what? Let's move him down. He's too cramped. We're going to end up not doing much good here. Let's put it right there. Alright, so we've got our snail, and we've got our pickup. We did that in the last video, and we made it to where it aims according to which direction you're facing. So let's do the projectile next. So let's go to New Scene, find our center right there, and let's add under, oh, okay, so we're going to need, now we have some choices here, and we're going to explore some other options later, but first we're going to start with the simplest, which is just going with an area 2D. And so this will be our boomstick shot. Okay, and then we're going to add a sprite and a collision shape. Y'all should be pretty familiar with that by now. And then under items, I'm going to grab this stone rock and set that to my sprite. There it is. And then need to adjust my collision shape as a circle to be roughly the same size. Now, one thing I forgot about, let's save this to objects. I just hit Control S to save. One thing I forgot about, let's come up here and let's look at how big this shot's going to be. So if I pick the tower and then I go to objects and I bring in that shot, so this is what it's going to look like. It's a little big, considering it's bigger than the barrel of the gun by by almost double. It's probably too big. You can play with this. Obviously, it matters, more to your game than realism. I could scale it here, back here I could scale it, but then I'd have to scale it for every single one I shot out. I could scale it here. It's a little messy to scale the collision shape if I can help it. So the best thing is to scale your image first. So I'm going to scale this one down to 0.6. Then I need to adjust my collision shape, so instead of scaling it, I'm going to go in here and adjust it accordingly. Save that. That looks a lot better. Now we still want it to be visible, but we're going to have a lot of particle effects and stuff on it later, and so that should help it be visible. Alright, so we've got that. We don't actually want it in our scene. We're going to instance it, so we just did that as an example, so let's delete it. Now, let's see. We're going to need, well, let's do that later. First, we're going to add code to a script to move it. That's what we're going to add. But right now, let's use a particle system. And we're not going to fill this out too much. I just want to add it so that we can see a little trail of the projectile moving. So let's crank this up, the amount up, and let's add a process material. We're going to add a particle system, so we should see something coming out now. And then the big one we want to change is this local coordinate system. We did that for the jetpack, and that will make it to where this trail behind the bullet. Alright, so I think that's enough for now. Let's go back here. In order to make this shot actually fire, we need to adjust the player script. So let's go into the player script, and we already have a variable for has the boomstick, so we should be able to come down here into our code, and we already even have a condition for if you have the boomstick. Excuse me. So let's make what we want to do is we want to check to see if the button is pressed. So just like we did with the pickaxe up here, we're going to say if input dot is action just pressed. Now we don't have an action yet, so let's go make one. So we'll just leave that empty for right now, or we could go ahead and name it. Since this is just a string, we can name it to whatever we are going to create our action as. So we're going to call it fire boomstick. Sounds like a good name. We'll use colon, and then we're going to create a function for this so that we don't clutter this up, just like what we did with the pickaxe. So we'll say fire boomstick. Now these do not have to match right here. This is just what I'm going to call it because it makes sense. So we'll come back up here, and just like what we did for the swing pickaxe, let's make a new function, fire boomstick. And right now we'll just print fire. Okay. So what we did miss is we need to make an action for this fire boomstick. So I'm going to go up here to project settings, input map, and then right here for action I'm going to paste in that fire boomstick, and I'm going to hit add. Alright. Now I'm going to hit a key, and I'm just going to use the key F because it's right there next to WASD. We're already using spacebar for jump. Could also use control. Yeah, let's go with control for now. I will also say I used F the first time, and I noticed up here in my utilities I've got this full screen toggle key object that I made, and these are cool because you can just drag them in, and what they do is here in the input, they check the input map for this full screen toggle, and then if it doesn't have anything, it actually injects a key for it, which is this code right here. Well, actually all this. So it goes ahead and it creates an action and then injects a key for it, which is really neat. And the cool thing about it is you can just drag this scene, this little subscene, into your game from one game to another, and you'll get that functionality when you press that button. So that's really cool, but my point is that this one uses the F key, and so both things were happening. So I had to change this for that guy. Anyways, we're going to use the control button for now. So when I press the control button, this code should run, and it should print fire. But this only should happen when I have the boomstick. So if I press it now, nothing happens, no output message. But now that I have the gun, when I press the control button, you see down here, I'm getting fire. So that's perfect. So now, instead of printing fire, we need to create an instance of our projectile, set it to be a child of somewhere that makes sense, and then set its position to be at the barrel of my gun, and then of course get it moving. We'll leave the get it moving up to the projectile itself, but here we need to do those first three things. So to get a reference to the projectile scene, we're going to create a variable, and we can do this one can be on ready var, and that just means that it's going to do it kind of like down in here in the ready function. It's going to do it when this is started up. We can do, what is it? We're going to call it boomstick shot scene equals, and we could do this with an export. That would be one way to do it. I think we've looked at that elsewhere. If we haven't, I'm sure we'll get to it eventually. But right here I'm just going to hard code it in, and the way I can do that is by just saying get node if I can type this morning. And see here, it's already given me hints, but what I can do is just drag this guy. This doesn't always work because of the dragging, but I can drag it in, and Godot is smart enough to say, hey, this is the path to that node. So that right there should do my trick. Wait. Get node is not what I want. I want load. My bad, that would have been pretty messy. Get node is for getting nodes out of your scene here, but load is for getting resources. And I can even change this to preload. And you can't use preload down here necessarily, but you can use it up here at the front, which means that it will load this in at the beginning of the game and store it in here for us to use later. Right, so now down here for the fire, we need to create an instance of that scene that we just created, or we just got a reference to. So think of that as like a line down here to this thing, right? So that's to that variable we just created, but it doesn't actually exist. Like, it's not, we got to make it real. It's just kind of an idea, and we got to make it real. So to do that, we're going to instance it. So we called it Boomstick Shot Scene, and they all have a function called instance. Right there it is. So that will create an instance of it, and so we can set it here and we'll call it shot. Alright, so this creates an instance of it, which means this is now real, but we don't see it because it's not in our scene over here yet. So we need to add it to the scene. Now if I added it as a child of the player, right, which is who's going to be firing this thing, so if I added it there, then when I moved, it would move along with me, which would be undesirable. We've seen the effects of that elsewhere. So I need to put this thing somewhere where it's not going to cause any harm. Now the easiest way would be probably to add it up here at the level, at the very top level of your scene, and I believe we can do that. Let's actually look that up real quick. So Godot get top level node, and we're going to get tree. I know that. Yeah, so this person is saying, hey, can I just go get parent, get parent, get parent? And you could, if you used a recursive method, which means it kind of does something until, you know, some condition is met. So you could go up the tree until you got to a null. But right here is a great solution. What we're going to do is we're going to get the root and then get the parent. There's also this one, which is what I was going to suggest. You get the tree and then you get the root of the tree, which is, there's always a node above this one. So you can't see this, you can't see it, but it's up here, and that's what this get root is talking about. And then get node parent. Oh, I think this guy is suggesting that it's called parent. Yep, right there. So we could use this, but we would have to specify level 1, which is not desirable because if we want this code to work in multiple scenes, we probably could just say well, and you can't say get child because there potentially could be other children of this get root. So yeah, that's not a great idea. This is the best. Well, this one requires that as well. That's interesting. Okay, well, let's go with this first, and we'll look at it, and then we'll fix it with another method. So back to my script player, go into the script. So get root, and instead of parent, we need level 1. Alright, and these quotes are funny because I copied them in off the web, and the way I can tell is, see how it's not turning yellow, it's staying gray. And so there we go, now it's yellow and my red goes away. Perfect. And then we'll go add child shot, and then next we're going to set the position of that shot. Now it is important to set to make it a child before you set the position, and I got into this with another project I was working on, and I was confused, and I spent probably half an hour trying to figure it out, and I kept getting errors, and I was like, what's going on? And that's what the problem was. You have to add the instance to the scene before you can set the position. That's very important. So to do this, oh, that didn't mean to do that. So to do this, remember we made this in our player scene down here, we added this position 2D, and this is where we want to create the projectile from, right? So, oh, I'm jumping all over the place. We need to get a reference to that, and then get the position of that thing, and set it to the position of the shot. So we can do shot.position equals this is a hard node, right? So it's created as part of my player scene here, and it's under Boomstick position 2D, and then we'll get the position of that. Alright, I've intentionally got a little problem here, but we'll check it out. So I grab my gun, oh, wrong button. I'm going to hit control, and I don't see anything. Now I know that fire was working before, so where did it go? One thing I intentionally made a mistake here on is I need the global position, because this is the local position. And I also need the global position of this guy. So let's try that again. Jump up here, grab it, and now I see him. Awesome! So it doesn't look like much of a projectile right now because they're not actually moving. So let's fix that real quick. Alright, so let's go to our boomstick shot, and we're going to add a script. This is, just standard for how we would move any other object. We're going to get rid of this, and this we're going to uncomment. Oops. And we can remove this stuff. And we're going to use the physics process. Because we're moving an object, so we need to use that physics process. And we're going to just do, now I could do position x plus equals 1. This is the absolute minimum terrible way of doing it, but we can check it out and see what happens. Hit that wrong button again. Alright, so I'm going to hit control, and it works. But we've got other problems. If I face this way, it doesn't go. Also, another thing we're going to look at is on our player, remember we set up this position and we talked about being able to rotate it? So I just turned it up and I want it to fire that direction, right? But it's not going to. It's just going to keep going straight because I'm just adding 1 to the X. So thanks to, I believe it was, I was looking in here to see if you made a comment, Kids Can Code, he had an answer that I Googled for this, and I was on the right track. I was looking for the transform. So the transform, if you look at a node, you have the transform here, and under the transform you have the position, the rotation, and the scale. So the transform contains all 3 of these properties together. So what I was doing is I was setting the so I was trying to set the transform, and really we want to set the position, but we want to use the transform to get there. So transform.x, and that's the x direction, and then we're going to multiply that by remember we need to always use this delta so that if we're running on a fast machine versus a slow machine, we'll get the same amount of movement. And then we want to multiply that by, and it's always a good practice to use a constant or some variable, and we'll call it shot speed equals, and we'll use like 100. I'm just guessing at a number. And it needs to be an even higher number than when you don't use delta, because delta is usually a number under 0. So it's gonna, when you multiply it, it's gonna make it smaller. So let's try this, see what happens. So now when I hit it, well, I'm still going, that's disappointing. Alright. So let's see. I do need to crank this up a little bit. Yeah, so that looks really good. Huh. Could have swore I tested this. Let's Google it again. Godot move object with rotation, maybe. Here we go. Here's his answer. This is actually not the same one that I saw before, but let's give it a try. Oh, I may know what's the problem. Yeah, we never changed this. My bad. So we're using the global position here that we're setting to the boomstick. We need the global translation, or transform. Yeah. There, see, I did that intentionally, right? I wanted you to see if you caught that. Alright, there we go. Now we're shooting up on the angle that we rotated it at. Let's see if it works this way. Oh, it works, but it inverts it. So that's interesting. So the reason that's happening is we rotated our object up this way, but then when we turn this way, we're flipping the scale. So it's kind of like inverting the thing, and now it's pointing down this way. So that totally makes sense. Yeah. So for now, we'll just go with the simplest route, which is to punt on this position being rotated, and then later we'll look at a better solution. I'm not doing it to be lazy. I want to keep this video as simple as possible. So now it should look pretty decent going both ways, right? Which is fantastic. It's what we're looking for. So yeah, so now if I go and I shoot the snail, oh, that's a big snail. If I shoot him, it doesn't do anything. Matter of fact, it even goes through blocks, right? So let's make this boomstick shot collide with stuff. So I added a script already for movement. Now I need to add a signal for when the body is entered. Okay, and so here we're just going to say print hit, and then we're going to add body.name. That way we know what we hit. Just kind of see what happens when I fire this. So that's good. I got a foreground tile map, so I know I hit the foreground tile. Let's see if I can hit my snail. Alright, hit enemy snail. Perfect. So we've already got this code going. All we need to do is make it appropriately affect the actor. So let's look at our snail real quick. It's been a while since we've messed with this. So we have, at this level, so this is what hurts something else, right? And we're hurting the player. But we don't have anything about getting hurt, and that's because we inherit from actor. So if I go look at actor and I scroll down, see we've got this hurt function, which means that I've taken damage, and it takes an amount. So let's go to our boomstick shot. We'll leave that print for now, but what I want to do is say if body.has method hurt, then I want to call that method. So I want to do body.hurt and then the shot damage. So let's call it shot damage, and we'll create another constant up here. And for now we'll just set it to 1, but you could set it to whatever you like. Let's see if this works. Oh yeah. I don't know where he went. I guess we got him. All in one shot. I forgot the snails only had 1 hit point. So let's get in the scene more so we can see it happen a little bit better. Oops. Well, there I got him by jumping on his noggin. He's so big it's hard not to. Alright. Moment of truth. Whoa, there we go. So we got him using just our projectiles. So awesome. So that's the, I guess that's where we should stop. So we got the shot moving. It moves both directions, even though we know that we can't rotate it yet. But it does fire out of both sides. We've got a little trail so that we can see where it's going. Oh, one other thing we'll cover while we're here, and we can hit bad guys. Now this is kind of weird. You know how I can fire through these walls? Kind of undesirable, especially once we get down here to, you know, like a cave or something. We'll be firing through tons of dirt. That's just weird. So let's fix that real quick. So remember we hit that foreground tile map. So what we could do is we could say, not the snail, we want the shot. So here we could say if, so we could just queue free, right? So this will get rid of that projectile in any case. So no matter what, if I hit anything, it's gonna go away, which is pretty much fine. We could conditionally, so here also it didn't pass through. That's probably what got the snail before, is I shot it, the snail jumped, and then the bullet continued to move and hit him again. That's probably why he died the first time. So this works pretty good, and I don't really have a reason to change it in this case, but you could make it conditionally trigger this based on, you know, maybe a group. So you could say if the body's in a group of enemy, then make it go away. And then you could also make the wall have a group, or you could even use physics layers would be the best way to do it, or physics masks, but those would take a little bit more work. And I think this is a perfectly fine solution for this game. One other thing, we're going to do a special video on performance, but one thing that we'll notice is, let's remove that real quick, this queue free, and then let's do this again, on this again. And what I want to do is I want to go up here to remote, and oh, we just added these at this root level. I forgot about that. Yeah, we need to fix that. So when I fire this, I'm going to add these bullets right here to this level 1. So you see, as I shoot, all these guys are getting added. Now notice something, they're not going away. So the more times I push this, I'm making lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of bullets, right? And even though I can't see them, they're still all going. So if I click on one of these and I look at the inspector and I come here to the position, see, it's still moving, right? It's still traveling along, and see, they're all hitting stuff. And so even though I'm just standing here chilling, there's like, how many? 86 of these shots are all moving and all colliding with things. So this can really impact your performance, especially over the course of a long gameplay. So we need ways to clean this up. And obviously this is by far the easiest. is to use this queue free. So let's watch that again. I go to remote and then level 1, and then grab this and let's shoot a couple shots. So it creates them, but then they go away. So I don't know if you guys see that in the video, but they're getting created, but they're pretty quickly going away. There we go. So that's a really good way of handling it. That's, if you can get away with that in your game, that's by far the easiest thing you can do, is just make sure you clean up those objects. Now, the one thing I forgot about is we don't really want to add them up here as a level 1, and the reason for that is we have to know the name of that first level. So let's really quickly fix that problem. So that's right here. We have to know that level 1. So this won't work on level 2. We would have to change this code to work on level 2. We don't want that. So the quickest way is, back before, I don't remember what we were doing. Oh, the key drop. Yeah, so in this background static objects, we had this items drop target, and we added a group called item drop target. So that's a good place to kind of throw all our stuff. You could also add a group up here at this level 1. That would be another good solution if you wanted to add things there. But we'll just add it here because we've already made this. So this is called group item drop target. So I'm going to go to my player script. Oh goodness. And instead of just getting node level 1, we're going to say get tree. So that'll get all the way back up at the top of my scene. And then I want to say get nodes in group. Alright, so this will search my entire scene looking for all the nodes in a certain group, and I want item drop target. So that's that name, I named that group. And then this will return a list or an array of all of the things it finds. But we know that we only have one in our scene. So we're going to just reference the first one. Now this would blow up if you didn't have one, but as long as you make sure that each of your levels has a node with this item drop target, you should be fine. And then now that we've got that node, we can call that the add child. So let's try this again. Let's use this remote and go to background static objects, and right now it's empty, there's no little arrow there. But if I start firing, there we go, that little arrow drops down, and it fills up. So there we go, there's our boomstick shots. Now if I jump, oh, I don't have the jetpack. This should be open enough, so I should be able to fire, and now you'll be able to see many more because I'm not hitting any walls over here for a ways. So there we go. So now they're nice and organized up underneath this node. You know, it's not cluttering up our scene, which it doesn't matter from a performance perspective, but it does matter, you know, if you're trying to get in here and debug some stuff, you may want to have this cleaned up. Also, by having them all under a single node, is you can clear them all out at once, things like that. There's some benefits. Now you can see they all start hitting a wall somewhere because they all got eliminated there. Alright, let's cut it here. I know this went a little long, but I think we covered some really valuable stuff. So see you in the next video.